right, thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Amherst Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. In the event of a fire or other emergency, please follow the exit signs that are provided in this room and throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting this room, the main exits are located to the front and rear of the building. Do not use the fire exits during an emergency. Live streaming and recorded meeting services is provided through the Town of Amherst YouTube channel. Today's date is Friday, March 27th, 2026. Could you please call the roll? Present. Present. Thank you. The first item is the approval of the minutes for the Tuesday, February 17th meeting. Do I hear a motion? Motion by member Gergen. Is there a second? Second by member Schubert. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's one abstention. That passes 4-0 with an abstention by member Phillips. The first item is the hearing of appeals. The first item is 21 Forest Stream Drive, an area variance. Would the applicant please come to the podium?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Sean Hopkins, and I'm here on behalf of myself with respect to the property located at 21 Forest Road. It is important to note the board has previously held public hearings in connection with this matter. Go to the next slide. Which one's easier for me to point? I don't care. Property itself is located here, 21 Forest Stream. This is Reese Street and Forest Stream, which of course is a cul-de-sac. Next slide. The copy of the survey of my property. So the issue that's in front of this board pertains to an existing garage, which is highlighted in yellow. It doesn't comply strictly with the zoning code with respect to two requirements: peak building height, as well as a small portion of a corner in terms of a setback. Next slide. So originally this board did grant a variance to allow a height taller than permitted. In the zoning code, the maximum permitted height of an accessory structure is 20 feet. A variance was granted to allow 22 feet. Next slide. What we're asking for specifically is to allow 24 feet 3 inches. When I was here previously, it was 24 feet 4 inches, but I actually had a surveyor actually come out and triangulate the height. It was off by an inch when I should measured it myself. It is important to note the building department did previously issue a building permit for 23 feet. That was a mistake, but it wasn't my fault, and it was issued by the building department. In addition, based on the updated survey, a small portion of the garage, which I'll highlight in a second, doesn't comply with the side yard setback of 2.74 feet. It's also important to note that there are there are windows on that side of the garage, facing to the north, facing Reese Street, facing the resident who has opposed this request. I want to note, based on further review, and although I think there would be a possibility they could remain subject to maybe some state variance or fire rating, I'm just going to remove those windows. So any concern about privacy in terms of people from the second floor of that garage looking down into the backyard, I'm just going to remove those windows. It's important to note the window height itself is not taller than what's permitted in code, but it is closer. And given the situation, and given the concerns that have been previously raised, we will just block off those windows on the north side of the building. And I would ask that if the zoning board approves the variances we're asking for, that you impose that as a condition, because I've spoken to the resident next door and indicated that those would be removed. Next slide. So a small portion of the garage doesn't comply with the required setback of 2.74 feet, which is here. The neighboring property owner is here, and of course her house faces Reese Street. So the side yard of my yard lines up with the backyard of her parcel. The northeast corner is at 3.15 feet. So it's skewed somewhat from the property line and just off a little bit. You can see it a little bit better in this particular illustration. So I need a variance right here. Next slide. These are photographs. The only reason I'm showing these are for two purposes. Number one, there actually is some pretty intensive screening there on the neighbor's property line. I thought that I had actually helped pay for that previously, but actually helped pay for the trees that are behind that for a previous property owner. So that landscaping was planted by the current property owner, and it is quite mature. And the nice thing is it's coniferous. And then secondly, I calculated where the portion of the garage exceeds 22 feet, and that's shown on the right-hand side. So it's basically that tiny little triangle. You can also see from this rendering where the windows are looking to the north. There are two windows that are directly to the north, and given the proximity to the property line, regardless of whether it's 3 feet, 5 feet, or 10 feet, they are relatively close to the neighbor's backyard, and again, we will remove those windows. Next slide. So obviously, this is governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, Section 267B3B, which requires you to balance the benefits on the one hand that would be received by the applicant if the requested relief is granted, and weigh those against any detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. Here, the benefits are quite clear. In the absence of this being granted, basically left with the fact that I'm going to have to knock down that garage. A legitimate question can be asked, how did this occur? You know, a land use attorney asking for a variance for their very own garage. And all I can say is that it was a mistake. Again, the building department issued a variance to allow 23, or granted a permit to allow 23 feet, and then my contractor simply didn't comply exactly with the plans. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't direct him to do that, and it's really put me in a little bit of a predicament, but I just want to make clear there was nothing deliberate with respect to that. Criteria number one, whether it will result in undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties by the granting of the requested area variances. Again, the portion that exceeds 22 feet is small, and if you measure it from the 23 feet that was authorized by the building department, it's much smaller. As I've indicated, we will remove the windows on the north side of the garage. In terms of the setback variance, we're literally talking, you know, a couple of inches just on a very small portion of the garage itself. Criteria number two, whether the benefits I'm seeking can be achieved by some other method feasible for me to pursue other than the area variances. And of course, given the structures there today, there are no feasible alternatives that would allow me to receive the benefits I'm seeking. In terms of the investment into that garage and the related improvements, it's approximately $75,000. So it would be a tremendous loss if I was forced to remove that existing garage. Criteria number three, whether the requested area variance is substantial. In my opinion, whether you quantify the deviation from the code requirement or if you look at what the harm is, while an argument could be made from the perspective of an adjoining property owner, they don't like where that garage is. And I understand that despite the fact it's the only place that I could actually install a garage on my property. The variances themselves are not substantial. It's more about the garage rather than substantiality. And the case law is quite clear on that, and I've addressed it within my application. Criteria number four, whether proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. It is important to note, because this deals with an accessory structure, it is a type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. As I've indicated, I will remove the windows that are located on the north side of the building. Everything else of this complies in terms of drainage, electrical, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Again, I want to note a building permit was issued to allow a height of 23 feet. It's clear as day in New York State Town Law, Section 267B3B, that even if you find the alleged difficulty was self-created, that cannot be the sole basis for your decision-making. And of course, I have to acknowledge, while it was my contractor that made the mistake, not me, I'm charged with that knowledge, basically having an understanding of the fact that zoning code, that it's zoned R3 and the underlying requirements. So that's where we're at in a nutshell. There have been some discussions with the adjoining property owner to see if we can settle this. I'm going to let her explain her position on that. I don't want to put words in her mouth. But at this point in time, what I would be willing to do is remove the existing windows on the north side of the garage. I would be willing to install a new 6-foot privacy fence along the shared property boundary, with her being involved in the selection process. And based on all of that, based on the information that's previously been submitted, based on the history and the evidence, I would respectfully request that you grant the 2 requested area variances. Of course, if there's any questions from the board, I would welcome the opportunity to address them.
Could you just go over the images with going over the 2 variances real quick? First the
Yeah.
setback and then the area.
I will. Let's go
above
back
it.
a couple more slides. Okay, so let's start here. There's 2 variances, height and setback. Underlying code requirement in terms of setback here to my side property line is 3 feet. This portion, but only this portion of the garage, the southeast corner, it's actually the southwest corner, has a setback of 2.74 feet. On this portion, which is the northeast corner, I'm in compliance. So it's just because it's skewed a little bit, it is literally off by 3 to 4 inches. I mean, it's not noticeable unless you really get a survey and go out there and measure it. But yes, that is an additional variance that was not included in the original request. I did go back and get an updated survey. It's a copy of it prepared by GPI in February of this year, and that's that request. Now go back a little further. The second variance, again, the zoning board previously granted a variance to allow the garage to have a height of 22 feet. The building department issued a building permit based on a height of 23 feet. That was a mistake, and mistakes happen. I'm not blaming them. And then finally, the actual height to this very, very peak is 24 feet, 3 inches. So it's 1 foot, 3 inches over what the building permit was, and it's 2 feet, 3 inches over what the variance was. And again, despite the fact it has nothing to do with this particular request, I will remove the windows on the north side.
And
Meaning no one will be able to look from this structure on the second floor down into the adjoining property.
do you know how the contractor went over the additional 1 foot and 4 inches?
Yeah, they didn't. What they did is, can we go back to the, yeah, if we go back, go back right there. One more. So basically they built the garage, I think it's 1.5 feet or 2 feet too wide this way, wider than the plans. And unfortunately they did it on the side of the neighbor. If you actually go a couple slides further, you actually see a detail.
I think you meant the height. and
The
I
height.
thought-
Oh, I thought you meant the
No,
setback.
the
I thought
height.
initially
Well,
when
no, here's why. Go to the next slide. No, back one. Can't, no, forward. No, next slide. I can't see that dimension. Oh, there it is. I think that is 30, it's 28 or 30. No, this is 26 feet, and it was supposed to be 24 feet. They extended it 2 feet too far to the north. Once that foundation's poured, they still did the same roof angle, but because the building's wider than it was supposed to be, it results in a height higher than it was supposed to be. And that's how the mistake happened.
So not self-created, it sounds to me. Does any member of the board have a question?
I'm focusing on the fencing. You indicated 6-foot fence. What is the maximum that, maybe, Dan, you can help me on that. What's the maximum height fence that can go in there?
6 feet is the maximum height in our residential districts.
Can't exceed 6.
Without variance. I mean, ultimately, I don't feel good about the situation that I'm in. If the neighbor wants an 8-foot fence and that triggers a need to come back for variance, I would. I don't think it's necessary because there's no windows on that side, but that's not a big deal to me.
We could make it a condition tonight, though? Is that possible, too?
What'd you say?
Could we make that a condition if we go ahead with this, that it'd be an 8-foot fence? Or do you have to come back for variance?
You can't approve an 8-foot fence. You don't
Okay.
have the authority to do that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, when it's residential to commercial, an 8-foot fence is permitted, but not residential to residential.
And Mr. Hopkins, on the second prong, when you discuss feasibility, you mentioned a $75,000 loss that you would incur. Now, that's the cost of tearing down the current structure and erecting a compliant structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any additional costs, or is that sum up your,
Well, I would have to, again, I would incur the cost of removing the garage, which I would need a demolition permit. Then I'd incur the exact same cost again only more now because.
No,
time
what
has
I'm
gone.
trying to get a sense of your total, to the extent you know, your total all-in costs if we were to not approve the
It's
variance.
$75,000 plus the cost of demolition.
Thank you.
Is there any other additional questions?
Well, no, I guess I have a question. So then you'd be putting up the same thing, but it would be 22 feet.
Be 24 feet wide instead of 26 feet wide, and therefore the height would come down to 22 feet. So it wouldn't be the exact same thing, otherwise I'd be in the same situation, but to do it so that it complies, in terms of costs, it's,
It would be smaller than the slab,
it would be what?
smaller than the
Well,
slab.
a tiny bit smaller.
Right. I mean, you could build a flat roof structure to a height of 22 feet, but I would never do that. Obviously, it's a garage.
Okay.
All right, is anyone in the audience here to speak on this item? To the podium?
Yeah. Okay, is it going to go into my 10 minutes? Because I'm pressed for time. I want. Okay, so my name is Heidi Zemer, and I live at 352 Reese Street, and I own the property with my backyard adjacent to the property owned by Sean Hopkins. That is his house and his attached garage, in a view from my backyard before his garage went up.
So the first question I have for you, just to kind of cut to the chase, on the second request, the setback. So one portion of the garage is 3 inches, 4 inches closer to your property line than it should be. Do you have an issue with that request?
It's more than that. It's 2.7 feet from the property line.
But what I'm saying, it's required to be an additional like 3 or 4 inches. Do you take issue with the 3 or 4 inches on the one corner?
Are you saying that I would be okay with that? Is that? No, well, when you look at the pictures, and I don't know if you've looked at the pictures in the packet of the structure that went up, it's not a tiny triangle. It's huge.
I'm just trying to
Yep,
rule out, there's 2 variances. I just
Right.
want to get to the one that I thought would be
Okay.
non-controversial, which is the setback. One corner of the garage, the garage is on a slight angle. So
Right.
one side is 3 to 4 inches closer to the property line than it should be. Do you have an issue with that one? His request that variance be granted?
I do. I have an issue with how the whole thing came to be. So you can see right here, he showed you the picture from the side, from his driveway. This is the picture from my backyard, and it goes across pretty much the length of my backyard. And it basically hangs over because it is so close into my backyard. So I just wanted to say that I believe that in August of 2019 at the zoning board meeting, Hopkins was granted an improper variance because he really failed, as I believe he did tonight, to demonstrate in any substantive way that his appeal meets the 5 criteria test. Now he's asking for a substantial height and setback variance tonight, and his argument based on the 5 criteria grows more untenable, and I don't believe that this variance request should go forward until such time as he renegotiates a proper and fair settlement with me. In terms of criteria 1, whether or not it's a detriment to nearby properties, this is pretty much self-explanatory by the code violations and the pictures you see of what it looks like from my backyard. It is a detriment in terms of my privacy with those windows, which were also approved as part of the building plans that erroneously approved the 23-foot height. That should have been caught by the building department as well and was not, so those windows went in. They looked directly into my master bedroom, and if I'd invite you all to my bedroom, but that would be improper. But if you wanted to, you could come and see how very eerie it looks to look at those windows. Anyway, detriment to my privacy, detriment to my access to sunlight in my backyard. Now, because of the way that the size and location of that garage, I receive very little sunlight in my backyard pretty much all day long, except for the evening when the sun sets. And then detriment to my property value. I had my house reassessed during the challenge process in 2024 after this garage went up. And my house took a hit of $25,000 in property value. I based the argument solely on and presented pictures like this of the fact that this was damaging the value of my property. So today, $25,000 in several years when I go to sell it, it would probably be close to what it would cost him to take down his garage or redo his garage, which I think is an option. Then the second criteria about the alternatives, there were feasible alternatives. In the video recording of that August 2019 meeting, and as he stated today, there were options. He could have had a flat-roofed garage, and he could have built, his property is 3 times the size of any other property in the neighborhood. So he could have put it any number of places. He claims the telephone pole in the creek, but it's so big, he could have put it somewhere else. But he used the word preference in that hearing. His preference was for this style, this size, and this location. Not, this was not a hardship, this was not a necessity. This was his preference. In terms of substantial, he keeps talking about inches, but if you look again at the size, it's more than inches. In fact, the height variance he's asking for represents an increase of approximately 22% from the original height limit that's set by the town code R363B of 20 feet. And it's nearly 11% greater than the original 22-foot variance he received. So as you can see, this is not a question of inches, but represents an enormous expanse of building that hangs over my property. The environmental conditions, it does have an impact on my physical property, my house, and the environmental conditions of my backyard. Also, it's so close to the telephone pole that's on my property, it creates a potential hazard and blocked access if access to the pole is ever needed. Self-created, he obviously let conditions deteriorate on his own garage, and he does say that he admits freely he did that because he intended to build this detached garage, and it was quite an eyesore. Now, it's not only the granting of the variance, but also the failure of certain town officials to act in a responsive and timely way to the complaints and evidence I presented from May of 2023, when construction started, to the present. When he started building, he received his building permit in May of 23, started building in June, and I immediately called the town building department and said, I think this is too close to my property. I need somebody to come out and look at this. I was ignored, all right? And then as the building went up in July of 23, I again called the town and I said, I think it's not only too close, but it's too tall. Can somebody place a stop work order until this can be investigated? No, I was told no. And so I had my own property surveyed because I was not happy with the non-response I was getting from the town. And so this is my survey, and I think the next one shows the highlighted, yep. So that's what my survey discovered, that it was 2.9 feet when it's actually closer according to his survey, and that the my person said it was 25.5 feet in height. And the building inspector, during the times they came out and the owner did not respond to their fails in the inspection for the height, they listed it 24.8 feet. So I'm really not sure what the height is, but I know it's over 24 feet at least. Who did what? My survey was done by True North. They're in Williamsville. I folded it over. I have it in my folder if you want to see it. I just folded it over so I could copy it to an 8.5 by 11. So when I had my own property surveyed, I did contact the town building department again, and I was told that, and I also at that time foiled the building plans and figured out that they had approved 23-foot height building with 2 double hung windows, neither which should have been approved by the town building department, but they did pass it. And so I was told by Mr. Burke During the plan review phase of the permit application process, we did miss the inconsistency of the proposed 23 height of the new structure. I'm certainly not making any excuses for this, but it did happen, and we have made the owner and the architect aware of this mistake. New drawings are being provided that must indicate the approved height of 22 feet. That never happened, because again, I foiled the building plans later after I saw in the transaction history that the revised plans had been approved by Doug Gessel. And so I foiled the plans, and I saw the exact same plans that were there the first time. And so I asked about that with Mr. Burke, and I said, are these revised plans the ones that Sean was supposed to provide after his original plans called for the roof height of 23 feet? He said, revised plans have yet to be submitted. I said, so nothing was revised. Is this correct? He said, yes, this is correct. This was in a November of 2025 email between myself and Mr. Burke. So as of November of 2025, last year, no revised plans had ever been submitted, as far as I can tell, or according to Mr. Burke. In addition to that, in September of 23, when I was still trying to get somebody to stop this, Mr. Burke wrote the following: Mr. Hopkins supplied us with the drawings indicating the 22-foot height. This was step one we had spoken about during our meeting. I did not place a stop work order on this project, nor did I indicate a need to. We still have yet to make an inspection of the construction, as one has not been needed to date. As mentioned during our meeting, we will require an as-built survey of the structure. If the height does exceed the allowable 22 feet, we will not issue a certificate of compliance, and Mr. Hopkins would then be in violation of his approved variance. At that time, he can either change the height of the structure, remove the non-compliant structure, or apply for another variance. So this puts me in a position of, I repeatedly tried to contact the town to get their assistance, which according to the website and town law, the building department is supposed to assist residents with questions about town codes, town laws, and complaints. Mine were always ignored. And this is a period of over 3 years that this has been going on, with 4 postponements that he has created, lengthening this whole process. And to say it's not his fault is incorrect, because I made him aware, as I made the town aware, of what was happening, and nobody seemed to care or consider that this was a problem. So he had a chance to connect with the building department, connect with his architect, do something to change, make the alterations when it was just framed in, but nothing was ever done. So I showed you the transaction history, as I mentioned before. Somebody came out to the property 4 times between July of 24 and March of 25 and failed the inspection because the height was 24.8 inches, according to the town inspector. He also continued to finish the house, despite the fact that there were questions about it. Siding was added, plumbing was installed, and a driveway was poured. So I don't really understand how this could have happened and how it could have gone on for so long on the part of Sean Hopkins, on the part of the town building department. I believe that the town building department deliberately ignored and failed to act on my request for a stop work order or any other action to prevent these violations from happening at any time over the last 3 years until it became too late and the building was finished. Now, I highly doubt anyone is going to tell him to take it down. His strategy all along has been it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission, and I feel certain the town officials helped him achieve his ends, but I do not believe this is how our local and state rules ought to be treated. They're not simply guidelines that people can pick and choose what to follow and to what extent. This is a substantial mistake, and I don't think I should be the one to bear the brunt of the responsibility for a mistake that I did not cause. Yeah.
I want to preface this with, I understand from what you said about what you've gone through with the town. That is not us.
I know.
We have a very limited role in what we can do.
I understand.
So the first thing I want to ask you before I forget is early on in your presentation, you said you wanted to talk about full and fair or full and reasonable settlement
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Mr. Hopkins knows what I mean by that.
Well, I think we need to know. That's an expectation.
All right?
You want us to take
Sure. What's that? Okay. So in previous times, the very few times that we talked, because he has not been responsive, I told him that I wanted the windows out, and I later found that legally he had to take them out. So that's not even an issue at this point. Offering to take them out is just play acting. The second thing is I did want a privacy fence, not just because I want to eliminate as much of that garage from my view as I can, but because he has neglected to upkeep his line, his side of the property line, as you saw from those pictures. It's awful. It's terrible. These weeds are coming into my yard all the time. I want a fence that is going to keep that from happening. And then the third thing is I want a financial settlement, because I believe I deserve some kind of recompense, not only for all that he's put me through, but because my property value has been devalued because of this. And if you come and you see it, I mean, people I don't even know say they cannot believe the size of this thing. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
I need you to persuade me on how, let's just say hypothetically, Mr. Hopkins knocks this down, builds a structure that's 22 feet high and 3 inches farther away from your property line on that one back border. Tell me how that improves your situation so significantly that we should deny his request.
So I would like to say, first of all, that it should never have been granted in the first place. As I mentioned at the very beginning, he should not have gotten the 22-foot height.
But we're here now.
But he'll have to start over. He'll have to ask for that height variance again.
I'm just saying, if he knocks this down and builds a structure which is requiring no height variance, and let's just say the back end swings a little 3 inches further onto his property, so it's not encroaching on the boundary by 3 inches. I need you to explain to me very clearly how that changes how that improves your situation so significantly that we should deny his request.
I am not sure that I can answer that because I wouldn't know what that would look like. The fact of the matter is, though, that that garage, the way it is right now, cannot be allowed to stand. And why does he have to knock it down and build a different one? Why can't the one that's standing have alterations made to it to at least lower the roof line? I know the windows have to go, and if he could lower that, and I don't even know about the property setback. I feel like very nervous about the eaves are pretty much hanging into my yard. The other thing is he erroneously mistook the white fence along the back between our properties as the property line. I don't know whose fence that was. It was there when I moved in. But it turns out it's actually on my property, and my property goes behind that fence where the telephone pole is. So he built without even checking to see what the property line was. So it would in fact be it would be further back if he follows the 3-foot setback, if he rebuilt, because the property line is not what he originally thought it was. So I can't say, because when I heard that he was building a garage, I assumed it was going to be a garage like the one that was there before. I never imagined that it was going to be this monstrosity. Now, and the other point is, I don't know that he should be allowed to build this, because in that video recording of the 2019 meeting, he also stated quite clearly that he reserved the right, and I don't know how he can reserve the right, but he reserved the right to possibly use that garage, the top floor, as an office, which I know is allowable, or a living space, which I do not believe is allowable under this current state codes or town codes. So he intended to create a living space in that structure. So I don't think a new structure is going to look like this structure for various reasons.
Sir, any other questions?
this is more for Dan. If the structure is built without going over, within the 3 feet, the windows would have been allowed?
The conflict is with the state building code for fire separation. So whenever a building is less than 5 feet from a property line, you may not have openings in that wall when your building is less than 5 feet. So that's a state building conflict. So it's certainly less than 5 feet, so windows are not permitted on the state building code, at least that's been described to me by Mr. Gessel, the supervising code enforcement officer, and Mr. Hopkins has been advised, as well as his architect, to remedy that conflict. So the windows are not permitted based on how he constructed it. If it was 5 feet away, the windows would be permitted.
But you have to also take into account the eaves, because there's a limit on the distance for the eaves, the roof eaves too.
Is there any additional questions?
In the packet that we received,
Yes.
you say that you have the 3 conditions, and I believe.
Yes.
Sorry. The first 2, removing the windows and constructing the tallest fence allowable.
Yes.
I believe Mr. Hopkins has agreed to that. The third one is really outside of our purview in terms of damages.
And that's why I believe that you should not approve the variance tonight until he has renegotiated a fair and proper settlement with me.
Respectfully, I will remind the board that it's not something you should be either using as a determination of how you move forward. Those negotiations have nothing to do with what you should be doing tonight.
I agree, and I think it'd be a horrible precedent if we start that practice of.
No, but in my point we're asking was simply to determine if there had been discussions that possibly remedy the situation.
But I would also respectfully state that allowing mistakes to be carried forward because they were not the fault of the owner would also set a bad precedent.
All right, thank you. Is there any other additional questions? All right, thank you. Is anyone else in the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll let the applicant have a brief rebuttal.
I'm going to respond very, very briefly. So number one, this position that this is all part of a grand conspiracy that I created, this is just simply not the case. You know, my preference would be to not be here. And then second, when we were here in September, that's where we left off, seeing whether we could negotiate a settlement. Again, while it falls outside the purview of this board, I did entertain those discussions. From my perspective, $20,000 for a variance that's off by 3 inches in terms of the setback and in terms of the height, if you go by the 23 feet or 22 feet, a couple feet, I just don't think that's a reasonable request. Again, I am going to install the fence. I am going to remove the windows. Keep in mind, the windows were fine as long as the plan had been built per the original plans with a 5-foot setback. There was a question raised by the neighbor about, you know, I could have done a flat roof at 22 feet. I've never seen a flat roof garage, and to be honest, that would have more things. There's no doubt that if you look from the view of her backyard, you see this garage. I'm certainly can't take exception to that, but with the exception of the minor relief, it's permitted. And what I mean by that is if the garage had a height of 22 feet and the setback was increased by a couple of inches to 3 feet, the pictures she's shown, they just really aren't that different. If we could go back to the survey, I just want to explain why the garage is there. So the reason the garage was there, originally when I bought this house, it had a carport in the back. It was never used as a garage by me. It was not in good condition. It was located here. I have a tri-level house, which is the common house type here. I actually have the model where this back wall is below grade, meaning it's 3 feet below grade. That's the only reason I didn't build an attached garage. I'd prefer to have an attached garage, no doubt, but I couldn't do it because, again, the nature of my house. And then in terms of the power lines, I did explore pushing it back further, moving it a little bit this way. I did reach out to National Grid. We actually met with National Grid on site with my architect, and they said absolutely under no circumstances were they going to allow me to relocate that electrical line and the electrical poles, even at my expense, which wouldn't have been a minor cost. So I was stuck with this constraint, I'm stuck with this constraint, and really that is the only sensible location you could build a detached garage on my yard. So with all that being said, again, I know this has been in front of the board a lot of times. I am willing to comply with the conditions as I've indicated, but I think based on the evidence that's presented, there's more than ample justification for the granting the requested relief.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close the hearing. Would any,
Before we vote, Mr. Chairman, just had a question for our council. We are bound by the 2019 determination granting the variance of 22 feet. So
You are,
So the
absolutely.
question is 22 versus when Member Phillips asked the question about what would change. It's 22 that was currently allowable under the law versus 24 feet 4 inches.
Yes, but you also have, unfortunately, something about 23 feet that perhaps, and I don't know, another department may or may not have allowed, and I can't answer to that. And again, I want to remind you, despite either of their comments about settlement or non-settlement or negotiations, that's not in your purview, and it should not be how you decide this.
And it's,
So basically, at a minimum, we're talking a 1-foot differential if you accept the 23 that the building permit, and then at a maximum, like 2 feet. give or take.
At the max.
Right, so
Again, with the,
It's based on the building, I just want to make it clear, based on the building permit, I'm off by 1 foot 3 inches. And again,
exactly.
that height has been verified by a surveyor, literally triangulating it. And then if you go based on what was originally approved way back in 2019, I'm 2 feet 3 inches over.
and just so the record's clear, your opinion with respect to the settlement, that's not allowable because it's not a factor under the town law.
Exactly, and that's not in your purview to even be involved in.
It would also be unprecedented. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm not aware of a single project where someone's been required to pay money to someone else for a land use approval.
Where the hearing is closed.
Are there any other questions for me?
Any member of the board would like to make a comment or a motion?
I don't think you closed the hearing yet.
Yes, he did.
Oh, you did, okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve both variance requests.
Would you like any conditions on that?
Yes, the two conditions, the removal of the windows and the imposition of, and the construction of a 6-foot privacy fence.
Is there a second on Member Gergen's motion?
Second.
That motion has been seconded. Let's go over the 5 criteria. Member Gergen, you made the motion. Would you like to go over that?
Yes, in my view, I don't think the minimal differences we discussed with respect to both variance requests would produce an undesirable change in the character of this neighborhood. And the second factor, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than a variance, I don't think that applies here as well, given the $75,000 loss that would be incurred by the applicant in addition to the demolition costs. In my view, knocking down the building would be unreasonable and economically wasteful. Given our prior discussion with respect to the difference in height versus what was previously granted in 2019 of 22 feet and what the town building department granted the permit for of 23 feet, we're only talking about a difference of 1 foot and 4 inches, I believe. And in my view, that variance request is not substantial. The fourth factor, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I think that weighs in favor of granting the 2 variances. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. The applicant acknowledged some of it was self-created, but the problem, the mistake was made by the town building department, and to the extent it was self-created, it doesn't weigh in favor of denial of the 2 variance requests.
Thank you. Could I get a roll call vote?
No, before you vote, Mr. Chair, I presume that this board's making its decision based on the numerous hearings that have been held here, not just the one from today, and that's the basis of any decision you make, correct?
Correct.
And are we imposing those 2 conditions?
Yeah,
I thought that was in the motion.
The motion includes the imposition of the 2 conditions of removal of the windows and the construction of the privacy fence.
Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Bray?
Yes.
Vice Chair Schubert?
No.
Member Phillips?
Yes.
Member Parker? Member Kurgan?
Yes.
That passes 4-1. Thank you. The next hearing on tonight's agenda is 2190, 2200 Worley Drive. With the applicant, please come to the podium. Ed Quest. No, those 3.
Good evening, Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, Young Development. Also with me are Joe Young and Tom Lewis. We're here this evening in connection with the request for variances for proposed multifamily project to be located at 2190 and 2200 Worley Drive. We're going to go to the next slide. Site itself is nearly 25 acres in size, was rezoned to MFR5 from OB by the town board on March 9th of this year. It is important to note the town board also did previously approve the request to amend the comprehensive plan. And during the lengthy review process of this project in 2025, we did have 3 separate informational meetings with residents. And a lot of the information on the plans I'm going to present reflects the input received over the course of those meetings. Next slide. That's simply a copy of the resolution that was adopted by the town board amending the comprehensive plan. Previously, this site was designated as appropriate for commercial office, and that was never developed in accordance with that OB zoning classification for more than 2 decades. Next slide. Copy of the zoning map, again, previously purple, OB, but now it's been rezoned to MFR5, which is blue. Next slide. This is the actual plan that was previously approved based on the OB zoning classification. Consisted of 4 large office buildings, nearly 300,000 square feet of space. That plan was never built by the current property owner. Next slide. This is the concept plan that we're currently proposing. I'm going to highlight the variances in a minute, but we're at 270 units. Each and every building will be 2 stories and 2 stories only. We have reduced over the course of the past year 94 units from what we originally proposed. We are showing a community building with related amenities. 11 acres of this site will remain as green space, which is 44%. We are showing gated emergency access to Limestone, which connects all the way out to Main Street. We are showing a possibility of a pedestrian trail out to Main Street or further to the north based on discussions with the planning department. That's a National Grid right-of-way corridor. And then our goal would be to include 20% workforce housing pursuant to the IDA's program that encourages providing workforce housing in these projects in Amherst. And we hope to fulfill that goal. Next slide. I also want to note that we did add this central green space corridor. We think that's a nice element that was added based on discussions with the planning department. And in terms of the site itself, you can see to the east, we have Bellingham in a developed residential neighborhood, consists primarily of ranch homes. We are not asking for any relief from that side of the site, and that's very deliberate. We comply with setbacks, building heights, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're also keeping as much vegetation as we can on this site. This site is relatively barren of vegetation, except those small areas. So there's not much here at all. Next slide. So this is the plan we originally presented. I just want to highlight 366 units. Did include 3 4-story buildings, 5 4-story buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We met with the neighbors. they asked that we consider going back to the drawing board, and we did. So originally, 366 units, 5 4-story buildings. Next slide. We then updated the plan, reduced it down to 332 units, which eliminated 34 units, and pushed what we were previously proposing in terms of 4-story buildings to the westernmost portion of the site, because this is a National Grid right-of-way, and then existing office buildings and multifamily project. Next slide. These are the renderings of what we were originally proposing in terms of those 4-story buildings. They were big buildings, but at this point they were 500 feet away from the closest residential property line. Next slide. It's also important to note during our third informational meeting with residents, we originally were showing a recreational trail connection here. We received a clear and unanimous position of those residents that they would like that removed. That's a topic that will be discussed during the site plan review stage. I just want to make clear that we are not proposing that. I believe it would be the plan department's preference that that recreational trail go in. We're not taking a position on it. I just want to note the residents have made it quite clear they don't want that road to be connected, nor do they want that recreational trail. Next slide. These are the current renderings, so comparing these to what we originally proposed, including those 4-story buildings. These are 2-story townhome type buildings with 10 units, and there's a couple buildings that have 5 units. Next slide. We're asking for 5 variances that I'm going to walk through very briefly. Number 1, the pump house setback from the center line of Worley Drive, 115 feet required versus 67 feet proposed. Number 2, the side yard setback of one building, 2,300 is less than permitted, 54.6 feet required versus 32.73 feet proposed. 3, the rear yard setback of building number 900 is less than permitted, 40.9 feet required versus 39 feet proposed. 4, the density is slightly over. Based on what we're proposing in terms of the number of bedrooms and the number of units, this would explicitly require a 26.37 acre parcel, and our parcel is 24.91 acres. And then finally, we are asking for a partial variance from the requirement for interior landscaped islands. I'll highlight this over the next 2 slides. So variance number 1, setback of the front yard pump house, that's right here. It's an accessory structure, and it needs to be closer than 115 feet from the center line. Number 2, in terms of building number 2300, located here. Oh no, that's variance here. We're off from the northern property line. And keep in mind, this is office on this side. And then these 2 buildings right here, we're off in terms of the rear yard setback, and that's measured to here. But when you look at what's next door, the National Grid right-of-way. And the reason those buildings are offset is, as you can see, they're adjacent to the community building and the related community amenities. But for that, they would align with this. It is also important to note that Bruce Wisbaum, who owns the adjoining multifamily projects, was involved in this process. We did make concessions based on his request, and there's a written agreement with him. This plan complies with each and every requirement in that agreement. Next slide. And then finally, in terms of the landscaped islands, so per strict compliance with the relevant section of the code 723A3K, all of these areas would need to have curbing. As you can only imagine from a property maintenance perspective, that's a nightmare because there's cars obviously parked in front of the townhomes. So we're asking for the variance to waive these interior portions, which are located here. Next slide. It's governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria, benefits versus the detriments. The benefits are quite clear. This will allow us to proceed based on the current plan that reflects input received over the course of a 1-year-long review process, including input that we have received from numerous nearby property owners over the course of that review period. On the other hand, I do not believe there are any detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community associated with this request. Criteria number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. The answer to that particular criteria, in my opinion, is no, given the nature of the relief. Criteria number 2, whether the benefits we're seeking can be achieved by some other method that's feasible for us to pursue other than an area variance. So with the exception of the density variance, The only other way we could bring this into compliance in terms of the setbacks is to increase the height of the buildings. That makes no sense. I believe the two-story townhomes have been very well received, so we want to leave it the way it is. Number three, whether the requested area variance is substantial, and clearly if you look at the harm that will result, they're not, because there will be no harm that will result from the grant of the requested relief. Criteria number four, whether variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. I would note the town board has twice issued negative declarations, one on October 27th of 2025, one on March 9th of this year. The project will also require site plan approval from the planning board. That ensures compliance with drainage standards, landscaping standards, lighting standards, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, as always the case, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, we do have knowledge of the zoning code, but that cannot be the sole basis for your decision-making. And again, the layout reflects the input we've received. Next slide. I want to just note very briefly, residents have asked us to look into technical issues, and we have. We have a sanitary sewer capacity letter issued by Patrick Sheedy of Carmina Wood Design, confirming there is downstream sanitary sewer capacity during wet weather conditions, and we will be required to make a payment in the amount of $170,000 to the town's I&I sanitary sewer fund in terms of I&I mitigation. Next slide. We also have a letter explaining stormwater management, and most importantly, from the perspective of the neighbors, there is no drainage system on this site today. And there are instances where water flows off our site into the backyards of the homes on Bellingham. That will no longer take place. All the water on our site will be conveyed into the stormwater management system, and that system will be designed and specifically approved to handle a 1-year, a 10-year, and most importantly, a 100-year storm event. All to be verified, of course, by the engineering department and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Next slide. Water pressure was an issue that came up. We coordinated with the Erie County Water Authority, and they confirmed that this project will not result in significant adverse impacts in terms of water pressure, either from a domestic perspective or emergency firefighting perspective. Again, Erie County Water Authority approval will be required in connection with the project. Next slide. Look at traffic. We also have a no impact determination letter issued by SHPO dated October 4th. Next slide. And it's also important to note both the planning board and the town board, in connection with their previous reviews, have both found that the project we're proposing is consistent with the comprehensive plan, including the policy that promotes a variety of housing types, including apartments, condominiums, single-family homes. This project will be attractive to young professionals, empty nesters, seniors, students, et cetera, et cetera. So we do believe there's a need for this, again, especially based on the two-story townhome appearance. And then finally, the comprehensive plan specifically calls for the redevelopment and revitalization of underutilized, obsolete, vacant properties. This property has been designated for development as long as I've been doing this, for at least 3 decades. It has never occurred to date. We think in terms of the history of the site, we've actually come up with the best alternative. And I think that's reflected by the fact that my client has worked very closely with the adjoining property owners. And then finally, I do want to acknowledge, pursuant to the DEC regulations that went into effect on January 1st of last year, unfortunately, we do have some wetland issues we need to deal with. Those small areas that are in green are potential jurisdictional DEC wetlands. Under those new regulations, we will not be impacting them in any way whatsoever. We are seeking a permit to impact adjacent area, which is regulated within 100 feet, and those are those areas in red. And that's one of the constraints we need to consider in terms of the site layout. So with all that being said, we would ask you grant the requested area variances, and we'd be welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.
Any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I just have one. From a town board.
Into the mic, please. Can't hear it on.
You can't hear, huh? Okay. As I understand it, there was an issue concerning water pressure, but the negative deck seems to have addressed that, indicating that there really isn't, if I'm correct, that there isn't an issue with water pressure for the surrounding properties, because that was one thing that was brought up by the surrounding people. And you have indicated that you've worked out whatever you had to work out with Mr. Wisbaum. So,
Yeah, I do want to note, we do have this analysis that reflects input from Erie County Water Authority. At site plan review, they will need to specifically approve the water design.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we will close the hearing. I will make note that the town board did approve a negative deck on March 9th, and we all had the opportunity to review that. Would any member of the board like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve all 5 area variances.
Motion by member Schubert, is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Phillips. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Did we pass the seeker?
No, that was already approved.
It's in that front. Oh.
Thank you.
All right, the third item in the hearings is a 8150 Transit Road temporary use permit. I believe that's Lowe's.
I'm not accusing myself, it's not Benderson.
Oh.
I don't think. I'm not sure.
It says Lowe's Venderson.
I don't know.
Before you start.
Yeah.
Are you with Benderson or with Lowe's?
Lowe's. Yeah, my name is Andrew Debbins. I'm an attorney here on behalf of the applicant, Lowe's of East Amherst.
You're not with Benderson.
Not with Benderson.
All right.
I'll do that now.
Thank you.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Andrew Debbins. I'm an attorney at Connors LLP, here today on behalf of the petitioner, Lowe's. This is a request for a temporary use permit to display the landscaping bag goods and other materials in the parking lot and other areas of the store. If any of you are like me, soon we'll be purchasing mulch to landscape around our properties, and you've probably bought it from displays like this at Lowe's or a similar store. Basically, they need a place to put it outside. The application today is simply to allow them to store it outside in required parking areas and I think a little closer to the building and longer along it as well. But it's only temporary until July 4th, I believe. So there's, in my view, as far as the criteria, there's no change to the neighborhood character. It's not a substantial or an adverse change. And Lowe's needs the permit in order to sell it outdoors this way. So if the board has any questions, I'll answer them to the best I can.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have a question for the applicant? All right, seeing none, is any member of the board here to speak on this item? Or any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Nope. All right, we'll close the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant hasn't specified the duration other than till July, but you are afforded the opportunity to grant them up to 2 years. So if they wish to do this again next year, you can allow them to do this for a 2-year period so they don't have to come back here next year and ask for the same thing.
Thank you for that information. Any member of the board like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by member Phillips. Is there a second? Second. Second by member Gergen. All in favor for 2 years, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next item on tonight's agenda is 995 Dodge Road for an area variance. Anyone here on this item?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Next item on tonight's agenda is 9170 Transit Road. Signage for the.
Hello, my name is Harpreet, and I am the owner of the property.
Could you write your name and address on the sheet up there too, please? One.
Yeah, so we're pretty much asking for a variance for the sign permit. We have one tenant at the building right now, and another one is potentially like in the future we'll have another one. And the current tenant wants an EMC sign, a digital sign. So we're here for that variance.
Who are you? Are you with the store or are you with the?
I am the landlord. Um,
So we got a letter from the town planning department stating that the New York State Office of Cannabis Management limits any exterior sign to 55 square feet and that it is prohibited.
so from our research, they're required 55. That's the max allowance for per sign. So they can have a building sign. There's no number of signs, but the max a single sign can be is 55 square feet. Previously, they were allowed maximum of 2 signs, and now they don't have any limit on signs. It's just that the max a sign, the biggest a sign can be is 55 square feet. Um, yeah. So, and then I know the town planning board had a question about the digital sign. There's no
No regulations
there's
on
no
it.
regulation on a digital sign.
So if I can just clarify, New York State Office of Cannabis Management just recently adopted new regulations on advertising, all forms of advertising, including product advertising. Our office, myself, reached out to New York OCM and asked for clarification on the new rules with respect to signage. They have confirmed for us that the 55 square foot limitation is not for the premises, it's per sign. In the memorandum I provided to you, I provided an exhibit of what 55 square feet would look like on the wall face. What the petitioner is proposing is 160 square feet, so the proposed sign that they represented on there would not be consistent with the regulations of New York State Office of Cannabis Management. So in this illustration here, you can see what the petitioner is proposing, a 160-foot sign for their cannabis retailer. That would be prohibited under state regulations. We would ask that you not approve anything contrary to those regulations. 55 square feet would be the maximum for a particular sign for cannabis. They, as the petitioner representative indicated, they could have 2 55 square foot signs, but in this instance, they're seeking relief for the cumulative square footage for the premises, and they're seeking additional relief on the pole sign, which this board granted a variance previously. So that's the most clarification I can
Would
offer
the
you.
pole sign also be limited to 55 square feet?
Correct. That portion for the cannabis retailer would be limited to 55 square feet per face. What they're presenting does comply. I believe it's 24 square feet for each face for the cannabis retailer, which includes both the digital display and the Happy Times, which is on the top. In addition to New York OCM regulations, they do limit what those messages can be displayed on that LED display. It can simply list hours of operation, address. So it'll be on the petitioner's best behavior to adhere to those regulations or be in jeopardy of losing his license or her license should they not adhere to the content of any signage or advertising.
Right, thank you.
I think that this submitted an updated.
Can you speak into the mic,
sorry.
please?
I think they submitted an updated, so that wall sign is not going to be obviously 160 square feet anymore. That's changed to a maximum of 55. I think it's, can't read it on my, it's like 8 by 4. I think it's well below the 55.
Okay, so you're not looking for variance on
The
the wall
walls
sign
is,
anymore?
no, I don't think we'll need one.
You're just down to the variance.
Just for, I think it's just for the EMC sign, yeah.
So I just want to correct for the record here. So maximum allowable signage for the premises currently is 150 square feet. The pole sign is 100 square feet as originally approved by this board. Therefore, they would be allowed 50 square feet for wall signage based on today's statute and the previous zoning board variance granted. So they're seeking 128 square feet on the pole sign, which is an additional 28 above what you had previously approved. So, and they're also seeking 360 square feet total for the premises.
I'm a little confused.
Perhaps the applicant might want to ask this board to adjourn this matter and have a chance to
Yeah,
further
because,
look at it. It'd be your choice, or they could vote this evening.
so pretty much right now, what, because the sign company submitted this, for the variance. So I'm just asking, did they ask for 300 square feet? Because we don't need that obviously anymore.
My recommendation would be
To
consider what the
re-adjourn it.
town attorney is recommending, ask for an adjournment
Okay.
so that you can sit down with your sign company.
So I'm
and-
clear, I'm not recommending, it's your call.
Yes.
I'm suggesting you may want to think about that.
So it would be better for us in our decision-making role if you came back with, you sort of gotten a sense of what our concerns are. If you come back with those answers.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
At least for me, for my, I need some hard numbers because we want to make sure, at least I want to make sure that if I'm making a motion, that I am in compliance with state regulations, so.
Yeah.
I need.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So are you asking this board
For
to
an adjournment,
consider
yes.
adjourning?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, last item on tonight's agenda is 450 North Ivyhurst Road.
Hello, everyone. Brian Price, the owner of the vacant lot at 450 North Ivyhurst. Here to refresh our memories from the last few meetings. We are proposing a 4-unit townhouse-style building on a vacant parcel of land, corner of North Ivyhurst and Millersport. Each unit be path. Each will have 2 parking spaces and a small patio off the back. Privacy hedges and trees around the exterior of the property. Quality, modern exterior, interior finishes make these units extremely desirable while enhancing the character of the neighborhood. And with discussions with the planning board, we feel like this is the most proper site plan use. Next slide, please.
There's a pointer there.
Oh, sure. So the variances we're requesting are for basically each corner of the building, and then parking setbacks. I can't read that. So the density of the building, the requirement by the town law is 23,400 square feet. Obviously, that's not obtainable being a corner lot. Our building would only be 9,240 square feet. A setback along the building setback would be 6 feet along the east line where 30 feet is required. There would be 5 feet in the front here, whereas 30 feet is also required. 11 feet, I believe, is the parking lot, where 30 feet is also required. The land is practically unbuildable without any variances. Next slide. Survey of the property. Next slide. This is basically with the setbacks included, as is this triangle would be what is allowed to be built on right now per all, right, per.
Yes, so, excuse me, Jake Flitton, Haven Architecture, architect on the project. So the tiny little triangle in the middle, up on the left-hand side, buildable area, 613 square feet, remains if we met all of the required variances, all the required setbacks, sorry. The required setbacks. That's what is left for us to build on this piece of property. So thus, I mean, very restrictive in what we can actually even construct on there. And so this is showing that remaining lot, or remaining property compared to what is set up with the setback requirements.
Next slide. This is the neighboring property survey, sorry. This is the neighboring property survey. There are 3 multifamily unit buildings, 3 buildings considered 4 units in each of them with parking throughout the back. I've been in discussion with the property owner and he's fine with the building. He was just more concerned about snow removal. And we considered putting something back here as connection for plowing per se, because the parking lot would be here for the tenants. That is the estimated size of the building highlighted. This is another optional site plan we brought to you guys to discuss. If you didn't like the original one with the building being here in the front, moving the 4 units across the back, we just feel like it'll be too tight of a corner to have tenants park and move their cars in and out, and then snow removal would be very, very tough. Next slide. You guys mentioned a few meetings ago about the feasibility of decreasing units to 3 versus 4. We would essentially be requiring the same setbacks of each. There would be a few feet difference. Parking lot would be a little bit smaller, so some more green space. But project feasibility for financial reasons would not make sense on my behalf. Next slide. The 6-point criteria, character of the neighborhood. There will be no undesirable change. A new construction build will bring young professionals, students to the area, add vibrancy, landscaping to a long-time vacant lot. There is no other alternative for this parcel unless variances are granted or it is rezoned. Substantial, they are substantial, but will have a great benefit for the project as far as being a popular area, busy corner, and infill a long-time vacant lot. For the physical, since no cars will be parked on the street, there will be no issue with traffic. Physical aspect of the area will be improved, new construction, modern building, vibrant landscaping. It will clean up a long-time dirty vacant lot for neighbors. Self-created, these were not self-created, but since it is a corner lot, it provides difficulty with multiple variances needed to build on. After discussion with the planning board, we felt this was the best use of the space. Benefits, this will benefit me personally, obviously adding a multifamily to my portfolio while bringing in good tenants to the area. Income will help me gain momentum for future projects, hopefully in the town of Amherst also. Next slide. This was just a brief financial outline me and Alden State Bank went through, just to show the difference from a 3-unit to a 4-unit of if everything went as planned and targeted, the project of producing, a very minimal amount per month would not be substantial, let alone grant a loan from the bank. Buffalo Modular is the preferred builder for the project with a 7 to 8 month start to finish timeline. Just to show you some comparable units recently built down Millersport, 62 North Townhomes. They're almost similar size. Building is a little bit bigger, 45 by 80. Ours would be 30 by 60. And these also generate $2,000 a month in rent. Some renderings to refresh your memory. This would be Ivyhurst Road and the corner of Millersport and Ivyhurst right there. And some more elevation renderings designed to be determined, but this is initial design that we've come up with. Thank you. Any questions?
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing.
Can I just make one comment real quick? Just to, if you can scroll up just a little bit there. On our right-hand side, right, the required area of a lot, buildable area, is that 23,400 square feet. We are at 9,240 square feet for this lot. So already substantially less than the minimum required lot. Thus, the setbacks are going to seem, a lot simply because of the lack of square footage for this property itself to begin with. So again, Not necessarily, I mean, a hardship for us, but not necessarily self-created, if you will.
Thank you.
And Dan, this has gone before the planning board and this has gone before the planning board initially. There's still,
Our office has met with the petitioner on a couple of occasions, giving him guidance on building orientation, and we gave him direction to go with this building orientation. We felt that the attached townhomes would lend some character to that street. But if this board should grant the relief, they will then be required to file a major site plan with the planning board. Anyone within 600 feet will be encouraged to attend that hearing on a site plan for this.
Any member of the board like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve all three variances, lot area, building setbacks, and parking setbacks.
Motion by member Schubert, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by member Gergen. Could I get a roll call?
Chairman Bray? Vice Chair Schubert? Member Phillips? Member Parker? Okay, and Member Gergen?
Yes.
The motion fails 3-2. The motion failed.
Okay.
You can talk to the building or the planning department about next steps.
Okay, thank you.
You have a good night.
Motion to adjourn the meeting, is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Gergen, all in favor, say aye. Aye.